The Space Marine 2 reviews are in, and this is going to be a quick review roundup. We have reviews on the Xbox, the PC, and the PlayStation 5. We're going to be looking at the Space Marine 2 Metacritic score as it develops throughout this stream. We're going to be reading reviews. This is something that we have done on a regular basis, just sort of doing reactions to the reviews that are out there. If you like this type of content, make sure to hit subscribe and make sure to hit the like button, and let's just get right into it. So right now, I would say these are very solid scores given everything that I was concerned about with performance, seeing it land basically right in the middle of the 80s. Now, that's only 8 reviews on PC, 5 on Xbox, and 5 on PS5. So throughout the stream, I will refresh that to see if it goes up or down. Sometimes it will go up or down by like 2 or 3 points depending on what the overall consensus is. Given we're seeing a lot of scores in the 80s, this is probably a score that will not move that much throughout the course of this this discussion. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to one of the first ones here that is at a higher level, and this is Games Radar. And what I tried to do was I tried to go to each of the different ones. So the Xbox Series X, it looks like was where they played for the ones that are listed here, and I'm just wanting to make sure I get the platform for Games Radar before we start reading. Let's see, I believe Games Radar was PS5, so let's just double check that before we start reading. Push Square Voxel, Jinx. I'm kind of getting confused. Metacritic, I think, is having a little bit of a hard time. This was happening earlier. Reviews were showing up and disappearing at different times. Let me go full screen, and let's just see if that doesn't help us here. I'm not sure what has happened, or did I might have scrolled past it. Maybe I scrolled past it. Well, we'll just have to read and find out. I'm now not able to find the Games Radar one on here, so we'll just have to read it, and we will have to see what they have to say. So this is raises the bar for all Warhammer adaptations. So that sounds pretty good. Most of the headlines that I sort of took a peek at before going live as I was kind of getting this ready for you guys, most of them seem to have really liked the game. It currently has an 83 on OpenCritic, and that is from 15 scores, so still not a high number of scores just yet. Thank you so much, Ruthless Blaxican, for renewing your membership, and I do owe you guys 10 members, so I'm going to do that right now while I read through this first review. Right here at the start, they give us their verdict, 4 out of 5 stars. Warhammer Space Marine 2 is an exceptional, larger-than-life shooter that raises the bar for all Warhammer adaptations. A dizzying sense of scale, along with some of the slickest combat around, will leave you often breathless, but always grinning. So it sounds like it's hitting a really, really nice tone. And guys, take a quick second and smash the like button. Let's get those first 100 likes on the video. This is our third piece of content for the day. We already did something about PlayStation Live service games, so be sure to check out that upload and live discussion. Now, the pros, they say, it blends melee combat and third-person shooting incredibly well. This is a good thing to me. This is a PC review. Thank you. Games Radar is a PC review. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with Metacritic's website. Huge environments prove bigger is better, and operations are great fun with friends. We are seeing from some other reviews that the campaign really shines when you play with other people. It's not necessarily at its best when you're by yourself. I saw that sentiment in a few reviews. Now, cons. Operations don't adequately support playing alone. Right there, what I just kind of touched on. The campaign struggles to make longer range shootouts feel as impactful, and it's a bare bones story. This is not as concerning to me. Big Warhammer fans might be a little discouraged by that. So let's get into the meat of it. They always kind of open these with a little bit of fluff. Hulking squad mates are distrustful. This translates into a lot of catty snark. Okay, so they're kind of talking about the dialogue and the story. Luckily, the fights are what we're really here for, and by the Emperor, they're phenomenal. Saber Interactive is the developer behind World War Z game in 2019, and its experience with horde-based combat shows. Watching hundreds of Tyranids crest over a hill toward you or form squirming pyramids to climb over each other and reach your high ground is dangerously mesmerizing. But you've only got a small window of time to take as many as you can out from afar, whether that's thinning out chaff with fully automatic bolter fire, lobbing grenades, or whittling down bigger foes with charged plasma rounds and careful laser rifle shots before the real chaos kicks off. Once you're in the thick of things, combat devolves into vicious hand-to-hand fighting where you'll often struggle to win enough room to start shooting once again. There's no cover system, so your only means of staying alive is to be aggressive. Be aggressive. Dealing damage restores health, while killing weakened targets with gory execution animations regenerates your armor plating. I love when games set up this type of sort of internal economy in the fighting. I loved this in Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal, so it's good to see it in another game. I always think that that's fun, that playing properly with your aggression and with your placement, I think is awesome. I think that really gives it a good feel. So I'm happy to see that in this game, and I'm happy that it's getting praise. That makes me really want to dive in. We will be playing Space Marine 2 gameplay tomorrow on this channel, so be sure to hit subscribe if you want to talk in chat, chime in, smash like, all those things. It's a thrill. Every fight feels like you're constantly fighting to avoid drowning, but Titus still feels like the strongest soldier in nearly any given battle. A single swing of his chain sword can tear through entire rows of baddies, and parrying is supremely satisfying, as in most cases it allows you to kill your attacker in a single gory animation. I really like hearing that the parrying is really good. One of my favorite executions remains grabbing a bestial demon by the throat and squeezing, which produces an effect I can only compare to squishing a banana so hard it flies out of the peel. Tougher enemies such as Tyranid warriors and Chaos Space Marines can take a bit more back and forth before they'll drop their guard, but parry enough of their blows and you'll get an opportunity to execute them with a point-blank pistol shot to the head or grisly bisection. It's incredibly fluid, although the formula takes a wobble toward the end of the adventure. You start coming up against more of these special enemies at the cost of fewer giant hordes, and fights start getting a little bit longer range as more baddies get guns, which is a shame, as shooting by itself isn't as interesting. But when Space Marine 2 gets the balance of gunplay and melee right, there's nothing quite like it. It's like watching an exceptionally well choreographed fight scene, except you're the one ripping Chaos Space Marines' heads off with your bare hands while turning their puny cultist pals into juice with a single bullet. It flows so naturally that you really do feel like centuries-old death machine Titus is meant to be. You're a formidable soldier facing overwhelming odds, a power fantasy I haven't felt so strongly since the Xbox 360 days of Halo and Gears of War. So this sounds really, really good. I mean, if the combat flows this well and feels this good, that's what I wanted. When I saw the trailers and we saw the parries and we saw the combat, it looked really, really good. So, a large part of what brings this feeling to life is the scope of Space Marine 2, whether you're in the overgrown jungles of Kadaku, larger-than-life Gothic city of Avarax, or Demirium's chaos-warped hellscape. Saber's bigger is better approach makes it feel like you really are fighting in a planet-spanning war. I lost count of the times I'd stop to admire laser batteries firing into the clouds of flying gargoyle Tyranids, or Space Marines ducking in and out of their evil cousins with their evil cousins across Demirium's vast purple battlefield. There are some brilliantly claustrophobic set pieces. One alien-inspired segment starts with Tyranids stalking you through the dingy service tunnels and culminates in a frantic shootout in complete darkness, but Space Marine 2 thrives when it makes you seem very, very small. These planets are also the setting of Operations, 6 missions that takes place alongside the campaign events. Operations can be played with 3 players, but unlike the campaign, co-op feels mandatory for getting the most out of this game mode. Okay, so it's not the campaign that struggles with being like alone. It's these operations in particular. So While 2 AI squad mates are serviceable on easy and normal, they don't pull their weight above that. As if to emphasize the importance of playing with friends, operations can't be paused even if you're playing with AI. This is particularly frustrating as missions tend to be quite long. At one point, I was kicked out of my own game for inactivity, which meant losing around 20 minutes of progress. But when playing with other people, operations are a blast. That sounds like some very strange logistical decision making, like why you would say, hey, if you're playing by yourself, you can't pause it. I think that's kind of an odd choice, but you know, it is what it is. That's, you know, that's how they decided to do it. I'm not quite sure why that you wouldn't let me pause it if I'm playing with bots, but maybe it's just the way they built the actual structure of the background. Like they're like, now you can't pause it. The 6 missions currently available are closer to Left 4 Dead than what's on offer through the core campaign, as ammunition and healing items are scarcer, while enemies attack in more choreographed waves. Your gear is also restricted, as here it's broken up into classes. This adds interesting layer of strategy. You might opt for the Assault class, which gets a Thunder Hammer and Jetpack to wade into the thick of things, while someone else uses the Sniper class to take out priority targets from afar. This sounds like a great community game night. It really, really does. So we're seeing that, you know, the performance modes on Series X and the PS5 are doing upscaled 1080 60, and then they're doing upscaled 1440 on the Series S, but it's only at 30 FPS. So might look a little better on the resolution on the S, but then you're dealing with lower frame rate. FPS is in the 40s during combat, as expected. Yeah, that was my primary concern, was that you were mostly going to be getting a 40 FPS experience. It's looking like it actually has better frame rate performance on the Series X from what I'm seeing. From that one video analysis, I'm seeing the frame rate of the PS5 dropping into the 40s along the Series X, but then I'm seeing other sections where the Series X is maintaining 59 and 53, and the PS5's dropping into the 40s. Series X is slightly better. Yeah, that's what it looks like. It looks like it's slightly better. If that's the case, that might be, you might get me to actually buy this game on my well, no, I want to play co-op with my wife, so I need it on the PlayStation. I don't want to buy it twice. Anyway, while operations are significantly harder than Space Marine 2's campaign, they also offer more incentive to keep coming back. A currency and XP reward can be spent on armor customization, gun upgrades, and class perks. Tweaking your armor feels feels a little padded for replayability. Rather than buying your favorite chapter's armor set, for example, you need to buy each piece individually. But on the upside, this part-by-part approach means there's enough depth to make the mish-mash Space Marine of your dreams. Buy it once for PC. No, I want to play it with I want to play co-op. I want to have it on I probably want to have it on my PlayStation for that reason. I have 2 PlayStations. Oh, it has cross-play. Maybe PC, Xbox. I don't know if my 2080 would get, my 2080 rig in the living room would get great performance out of that. Those scenes aren't lined up. Oh, yeah. Why, you can't trust that guy? Yeah, he doesn't have the scenes properly lined up. He has the PlayStation getting into the 40s in a completely different section, and the Xbox is getting 59, but he's staring at a wall. So, of course, he's maintaining better frame rate. He's not in the same section. He's staring at a wall. The only part of Space Marine 2 I didn't get to play ahead of launch due to the matchmaking restrictions is Eternal War. Excuse me. A set of 3 6v6 PvP modes with Warhammer twists on Team Deathmatch, Domination, and King of the Hill. But of the 17 hours I've had with everything else, it's hard to imagine anything outshining the PvE offerings. This adventure is a monument to excess, but it's hard to imagine it working in any other way. If anyone tells you that a game doesn't need motorized swords and 8-foot-tall super soldiers who can throw around heretics like ragdolls, consider what else they may be lying about. Warhammer Space Marine 2 is pure, ridiculous fun and the best third-person shooter I've played in years. So Games Radar reviewed that on PC and had good things to say. Let's check out what Push Square has to say about the PS5 version. That says their game rating is not available, but I'm fairly certain their game rating is right here. They gave it a 90. It's a triumph of the storied universe, with a lengthy cinematic campaign that's full of memorable set pieces that showcase the power of the PS5, as well as half a dozen formidable operations in co-op play. For co-op play and the prospect of a horde mode on the horizon, Space Marine 2 is already a tribute to the worthy god, Emperor Mankind himself. Now, before we read, let's go back here and let's see if we have any more movement on the score. PC has now jumped to 12 reviews, 6 on Series X, and 6 on the PlayStation 5. And again, the score just doesn't seem to be moving all that much, with the highest score being PS5 by an 86, down by 1, 85, 84. So these are all within range of each other. Excuse me. Let's see. Here we go. Graphically, it's a powerhouse. In performance mode, at least, it does a staggeringly good job of depicting the chaos and the carnage. Resolution takes a hit, but the action is still crisp and clear. And while we did experience brief moments of slowdown during some of the game's most demanding moments, it was not enough to distract from the glorious scenes on screen. We were aware of Saber Interactive's previous port work, but it seems we weren't familiar with its game. Space Marine 2 is a big, bombastic AAA action blockbuster jam-packed with the kinds of wince-inducing finishing animations that would make Kratos himself nod along in violent approval. Bolter, this is a somewhat derogatory term used by 40K fans to describe particularly action-heavy Black Library novels, but it's incredibly apt in this context. Outside of sometimes interacting with terminals or obstacles, the player's primary verb is the industrial-scale slaughter of Xenos. Like Gears of War, with chest-high walls, Titus and company enjoy a rock-solid mechanical foundation, bug-free, except for the NIDS, which boasts of a wide range of futuristic weaponry. So that's good. Is anybody talking about bugs in the game? Guys, take a quick second and smash the like button. Really nice turnout, almost 500 people here. Let's go for 200 likes. If you've never been here before, usually I am in this scene, and today we're doing a bit of a Space Marine 2 review roundup. We're kind of rounding them up and giving you guys a nice run through of what people are saying. So take a quick second and smash that like button, and keep pushing those gifted members, or become a member. If you pick up your own member, pick Member Plus or VIP. The $5 member tier is primarily reserved for gifteds. They get to sample a lot of the extra content that we do, and then when you bump up, you get everything. This arsenal this arsenal contains all of the 40K staples that you might expect, as well as some upgrades. The trusty bolt gun now has a new variant, like the auto bolt rifle, the bolt carbine, but melee combat steals the show. The experience of fending off staggering numbers back-to-back against all odds is a thrilling one. Each melee weapon has a unique characteristic and simple combo chains, which, when combined with a generous parry system, allows you to stand tall even in the face of overwhelming numbers. From the gruesome chain sword to the devastating thunder hammer to the simple but effective power fist, there is quite a bit of nuance between each. While the elegant power sword remains our favorite, it's nice to mix things up occasionally. So it does really seem like people are enjoying the melee aspect of combat the most, and kind of how that works. And like the shooting is kind of like, it's fine, but it really isn't the centerpiece here. And I think that that's good, because I think that'll help the game, you know, have a more unique feel. So the Tyranids are a wonder, appearing in uncountable swarms during set-piece engagements and many of their fan-favorite forms, from Gaunts to Lictors, Ravagers, and okay, I don't know any of these. I've never played these games before. At a high level, combat becomes a delicate balance between clearing chaff and isolating more deadly opponents, with specific weapons designed for both room clearing and dueling. Like Bungie with Halo, Saber describes the difficulty above standard as the intended experience, so naturally we went with that. We love a challenge, and Space Marine 2's veteran difficulty certainly provides it, so much so that we had to dial it back to make it through the final few boss encounters of its 10+ hour campaign, but we're already planning to do it again with friends. There's even a difficulty above that for the masochists out there. So the first review said they played it for about 17 hours, and they're saying it's about a 10+ hour campaign. Probably depends on your approach, I would think, to difficulty as well. You know, if you're having to replay sections due to a certain fail rate. Average score is in the mid-80s right now, Broken, ranging from 84 to 86. So, Hype is real. Yeah, Space Marine 2 now the number one in the number one purchase rank on Steam, it looks like, according to the screenshot in Discord. Whether playing solo or cooperatively online, Titus is accompanied by fellow Ultramarines Gadriel and Chiron, who get their own basic story arcs and provide a surprising amount of banter as well as support fire. It's a nice touch with co-op companions playing their part of one another. We feel it was a missed opportunity to not let players change the weapons that the AI is carrying, again, a la Halo. But still, the effort to characterize each is appreciated. In terms of sound design and cinematics, again, it's a top-shelf stuff. The exaltations of your battle brothers carry clearly over the sound of the chittering Xenos hordes, all to the explosive beat of mass reactive bolter fire. Operations provides surprisingly involved cooperative content. 6 are currently in the game and more are coming with free updates. Each is unlocked through the campaign progression and in a really neat trick, you see the effect and the consequences of these side stories periodically, as they are often happening concurrently, narratively speaking, and are conducted by the other named characters. For example, one involves killing a hive tyrant, the brains behind the psionically linked swarm, and Titus, Gadriel, and Chiron encounter the aftermath of this action during the campaign. Well, that's kind of cool. In operations, players choose a specific archetype: tactical, assault, vanguard, bulwark, sniper, and heavy. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Ooh, nice. And a fire team can only have one of each, adding a further element of strategy, earning experience and upgrades to unlock additional cosmetics and better gear. These are designed to be played repeatedly and on harder difficulties once you're ready to meet the challenge. I think they've developed what sounds like a pretty cool ongoing format with these operations. I'm really interested to see what it feels like with respect to, you know, the co-op experience and the difficulty as you decide to scale it up, depending on, you know, what you're in the mood for and how strong you feel like you are now. Conclusion: Space Marine 2 does its legendary setting justice, offering a high-quality cinematic campaign with that is a wild ride to blast through, and the player. And it only gets better if you bring a few friends to watch your back. Add to that the clever operation side stories, the competitive Eternal War multiplayer, and the promise of a dedicated and free Horde mode on the horizon, and Space Marine 2 gets a benchmark for 40k games worthy of its own storied, illustrious lore. The pros: brutal, satisfying third-person combat, technically sound, performs well, instant cooperative classic, jaw-dropping numbers of enemies, strong campaign in solo or co-op, a complete package at launch, great sound design. Cons: story splits focus, trying to do too much, difficulty spikes in the back half, and some slowdown during taxing encounters. And they give it a 9 out of 10, which they call excellent. 9 out of 10 stars. That's great. Now, this is one of the lower scores. We are seeing some scores come in around the 70s. So I like to give you guys a spectrum when we do these review roundups. So take a quick second. If you guys have enjoyed the content so far, we've only been streaming for about 20 minutes or so. Smash that like button. Let's try to get 200 likes on the video. Thank you, everybody, for being here. 500 folks tuning in. Let's check out one of the lower scores. I wouldn't say this is a bad score, but this is one of the ones that is lower on the Metacritic site. So Jinx TV says, the most aggressive 7 out of 10 is a game I can wholeheartedly get behind. So they're recommending it, but it sounds like they're not giving it the highest of praise or score. You are indestructible. Okay. This is the central premise of the game, and it certainly manages to be quite an impression. Okay, so the combat, right? Swarm, fighting, blah, blah, blah. All right, let's get into the meat of what they say. When Space Marine 2 potentially comes undone is that neither the combat nor the plot ever substantially evolves beyond its opening gambit. Depending on how that lands with you, you may ultimately depend on how much mileage you get out of it. But there's no question that everything the game sets out to achieve has been delivered with a level of polish and gratification that makes it hard to put down once you get rolling. I've already once mentioned weight when it comes to the feeling that the Space Marine gameplay elicits, but somewhat bizarrely, weight was incidentally the first word that came to mind when trying to process the full storyline of Space Marine 2. Whilst the overall narrative is far from perfect, I do feel somewhat sorry for Saber Interactive, who has done the best job they can given the enormity of the task they were faced with. On one hand, the writers attempting to tell a story within an already vast and convoluted Warhammer universe, contending with being true to the terminology of the world and throwing in phrases that will feel rewarding to existing fans. The downside is that obviously for new fans, this will come across as the most loaded nonsense gobbledygook that players will either never fully appreciate or care to understand once the credits have rolled. To be clear, this was never off-putting, but it did give the feeling that maybe I should have boned up on my 40k history and relevant terminology before starting the game. I think this can be fine, though, because it can serve as a form of, passive environmental storytelling where you're hearing all these terms and things that you don't quite understand, but it's attached to this larger world. So I think that can work for people that, maybe haven't played before. The other weighty issue is that Space Marine 2 attempts to wrestle with is that it's a true sequel to the 2012 game, and that's arguably where narratively the game struggles the most. You're constantly reminded of events or characters from the first game, but for reasons that are secret and cannot be spoken about to other characters. There's equally a lot of posturing over the secrecy from Titus throughout the game, and normally the characters who are either suspicious or unwilling to trust the hero. Either way, it always feels like you're awkwardly watching two people fighting over a past conversation that you're not strictly privy to. The less said about the game's 2 random cameos, which made me feel nothing because it was never truly explained who these people were, just shows the issues of Space Marine 2 is attempting to contend with. So it sounds like the story is best if you played the first game and understand a lot of the lore, and if you haven't done that, then it might be a little confusing. Yo, it's good, Wooly. Once again, it's never enough to put you off the game entirely, but it does create a sense that you're never truly up to speed on why these conversations, characters, and past events matter, and that's from someone who's played the first game 12 years ago. Annoyingly, it sort of begs the question of why the game didn't include some kind of vignette or cutscene before it started to at least bring players up to speed. Yeah, that would have been a pretty good idea. Story so far videos can be very helpful. Thanks for the gifted. Thanks for being here, our teammate. I appreciate that. Yeah, man. Thumbs up. Keep hitting those thumbs up, boys. There's no frame of reference as to who the character of Titus is and what he did that was so heinous and why he finds himself in his current situation decades after the events of the first game. Instead, players are just expected to work it out or ignore it entirely, which is incredibly hard to do when most of the side characters appear to be unceremoniously ticked about Titus's presence in the first place. Doesn't Gears of War kind of open that way in the very first game? Aren't you like in a prison cell and you get like tidbits of why? But like I'm having a hard time remembering. I haven't played Gears of War 1 in like a super long time. Putting aside the weight of issues in the storyline has to deal with, the actual narrative of Space Marine 2 isn't especially memorable either, and can be boiled down to simply good guy lands on a planet of aliens to save somebody, loses a MacGuffin in the process, then must retrieve said object of power before the bad guys can use it to destroy the forces of good. It's largely forgettable and at times leans heavily into topics and important objects from that first game, surprisingly, which again makes the decision to not clue people into the events of the first game even more perplexing. I think it's fine to have a story like this in a game like this. I don't think anybody is booting up this game and expecting some extremely nuanced, story. Operations mode. Interestingly, the game also offers a series of additional missions. Okay, operations. We know how operations work. They're a pleasant way to extend the campaign, not least because these missions are referenced so heavily by Titus and his squad throughout their own campaign, but they do little to move the story in any meaningful way. Okay. Ultimately, the storyline that underpins Space Marine 2 is serviceable without ever being memorable. For fans of Warhammer 40,000, it's a decent enough vehicle to allow players to achieve their dream of playing as a hulking Space Marine, mowing down hordes of enemies. Of course, we imagine that most people picking up the game aren't doing so to find out what happened to Titus after the events of the first game. Let's not be stupid. Everyone's here for the power fantasy that comes with stepping into the bulky suit of a superhuman killing machine, armed with a massive ruddy gun and chainsword, and that's where the game excels. Combat is at the heart of the game, and in many ways dictates everything you do. There are no puzzles to speak of, no random collectathons of bizarre objects or trinkets. Space Marine 2 moves at a speedy pace of one deathly battle to the next, with little consequence for anything in between. See that thing in the distance? Okay, run over and kill it. Door in the way, open it and kill whatever's on the inside. Nothing in front of you? Well, better continue to the mission destination and mow down anything that gets in your aggressively linear path to get there. Yeah, I mean, this is exactly what people want out of this game. That's a good thing. The only real difference at any given point is whether you choose between your ranged shooting arsenal of weapons or up close and personal meaty melee combat. Once again, though, whilst combat feels completely satisfactory and at times glorious after you've pulled off a sick parry or execution, it doesn't materially change from the first to the last hour. And this is something that I think people probably expect, right? I literally don't think that people are coming at this game and saying, man, there better be a lot of nuance and a lot of dynamics, and the gameplay better change quite a bit when we get to the end, and and the like. I think it probably is what everybody is expecting, that it largely should stay within its lane the entire time. I don't anticipate anybody having an issue with this. Like, the gameplay didn't change enough by the end. I mean, Helldivers is certainly comparable in that regard, and people seem to, like that about it. The game does feature a wide variety of weapons that will slowly open up to you across the campaign, from bolters to sniper rifles to plasma guns and more, but there's no big change. You could make do with the humble bolter from start to finish and be content. Likewise, while you get offered the option of chain swords, power swords, and eventually a thunderhammer, it all broadly feels like the same melee gameplay when you're wading through swarms of enemies. And no one cares. And no one cares. I think people will be thrilled. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing cooler than watching your Marine swing his massive thunderhammer and splat a lovely Tyranid into mushy pulp, or watching a bolt gun tear through a human cultist and turn them into a bloody puff of smoke. But like a lot of the game, combat feels rather one note. The only times the combat ever changes pace is for the occasional bit of jetpack-enthused action, which gives your Marine the ability to fly above the battlefield and dive down for some excellent ground pounds. There's also a brief campaign mission that veers into Gears of War territory when you use a flamer inside of a building to keep back swarms of rippers, like tiny maggot Tyranid creatures. There are moments, but these moments aside, and a few boss fights with a health bar, combat never really evolves beyond what you experience in the first hour of the game. Yeah. I think everybody kind of expected that. I don't think anybody expected it to not go that way. Incredible vistas. What does significantly change, however, is the environments you visit, but not necessarily for the better. In short, the environments in Space Marine 2 are everything I would have expected from a Warhammer game. There's nothing especially beautiful to look at. Most of the three main settings take place in war-torn battlefields where the visual appeal is rather dark, dreary color palette with the occasional pop of red and orange from an explosion or two. It's either a muddy swampland or a decimated city of gray or a ravaged planet with a purple skyline. When not in the thick of it, you're aboard a battle barge, which comes with all of the usual homily accompaniments of the Adeptus Astartes. I don't know how to say that. That's Latin, darling. Space Marine chapters, namely a boatload of steel with the occasional room decked out to look like a cyberpunk has taken hold of a church. Again, nothing awe-inspiring to make you think, wow, that's something I've not seen before. But then again, this is Warhammer, the grim, the dark. Everything is meant to look rubish or downright despicable. It's supposed to be a war-torn mess. Typically, with most floors covered with limbs and blood and guts. If anything, I found more joy in walking past an Imperial commissar lining a firing squad of some fellow Imperial Guard who had presumably not performed their duty. But broadly speaking, you could say that the environments, despite not being especially eye-catching, were true to form and what I wholeheartedly expected to see. It was war, it was gruesome, and nothing more. If anything, the most eye-catching moments were normally reserved for peering over the vast city and ruins at the start of a mission, watching a Tyranid swarm amass in the distance. These moments, though, felt few and far between and were ultimately forgotten about towards the third act. The only saving grace of this move was that whilst there were less awe-inspiring Tyranid moments in the third act, this is also where some of the best cutscenes occurred. So even though the latter parts of the game do become a bit more intimate, it did at least have some decent cutscenes to do some of the heavy lifting and back up the decision to move away from one of the game's main selling points. Um, did I say rubish? Sorry, rubbish. Did I say rubish? There's also the multiplayer portion. Yeah, nobody can play that yet. Without question, it's a good game. What? Without question, though, Space Marine 2 is a good game, if not a great game. Despite its flaws, you can tell Saber Interactive has crafted a game with true love and care. Fans of the tabletop game will no doubt appreciate what it has to offer, and fans without the same grounding will likely be wowed by the scale and the war-torn world and visceral combat which underpins it. There's plenty to enjoy, and I hope we don't have to wait another 12 years to see what's next. I mean, this is where I think scoring gets confusing, and we have this debate all the time. To say, without question, it's a good game, if not a great game, and then to give it a 7 just seems weird to me. Oh, they gave it a 7.5. Okay, that's... Okay. Their title said 7 out of 10. They reviewed it on the PS5. Yeah, I don't know. That conclusion sounds that conclusion sounds like an 8.5, not a 7.5. That sounds like a, you know, it's a good if not great game. I don't know. And I feel like their quibbles are very specific. So this review doesn't bother me at all. I feel like their quibbles are very specific and not necessarily enough to drop the game to a 7.5, you know. Not many people are mentioning performance, but we're hearing performance is largely fine on the consoles. There are dips, but it's not terrible. So, yeah, that wasn't a bad review. When I saw 7 out of 10, I thought, oh, they might actually have some gripes here. I didn't feel like they had any pretty severe gripes. I didn't hear an 8.5 in that text. I didn't hear a 7.5 either. Again, it felt like their quibbles were very specific. It didn't feel like it was like, oh, this game has some serious problems or this game's got some missteps. It felt like their quibbles were very specific. So it didn't seem like most people would rub against those rough edges that they were talking about. You know, like the biomes being similar and the combat being similar. It's like, yeah, I don't think anybody expected, you know, otherwise. I don't think anybody expected otherwise. So this is the Pure Xbox review. I'm actually going to scroll down here to the bottom because I feel like a lot of people are largely saying the same thing. Let's look at their conclusion. Warhammer Space Marine 2 is a spectacular achievement that gives Warhammer fans everything they could possibly have wanted when it comes to role-playing their favorite chunky space boys. Saber's swarm tech is deployed to dazzling effect and with purpose and context too. This is the Tyranid swarm of your nightmares, and you've been given all the slick melee moves, sick finishers, and great big shooty guns you'll need to stave it off. Think Gears of War with hundreds of enemies on screen at once, with the cumbersome cover system removed and the speed dialed up, and you're in the right place. And what a place to be. Whether solo or with pals online, this is one of the best action games we played in a while. So high praise here from Pure Xbox. They say, stunning combat nails the tone and vibe perfectly. Mix of brutal melee and OTT. What's OTT gunplay? Over the top? Is that what OTT stands for? Over the top? Feels incredibly addicted. Swarm tech gives us the ultimate alien threat to face off against. Slick and readable action no matter how busy it gets. Campaign and operations are intertwined in interesting ways. Customization options are a winner. Fully co-op campaign and operations. Over the top? I don't think I've ever seen somebody do that with over the top before. The cons. Absolutely no fun if you're a Tyranid. Some pop-ins here and there. No local co-op is a shame. Local co-op would have been an absolute insane task for this game. So they give it an excellent. They give it a 9 out of 10. So good score here from Pure Xbox. Good score here. Absolutely no fun if you're tuned in. Yeah. All right, let's see if the number of reviews has changed much. 21 reviews now on PC. PS5 is at 12 and Xbox is at 9. Both the consoles have dropped. PS5 was previously at an 86, and Xbox was previously at an 84. So we are having seemingly a bit of a drop here. And let's see what the reasons might be. I wonder if it's maybe some of the performance issues that we're hearing about. Performance issues don't seem that strong. So now we have 2 mixed reviews on PlayStation 5. Let's go ahead and check that out. Yeah, so we have PlayStation Lifestyle giving it a 7, Digital Spy giving it a 7, which is what's pulling it down. Right here, it's best enjoyed in multiplayer given some AI frustrations, and its operation mode is a few pieces of content short of being an excellent addition to the package. So it seems like this 7 out of 10 feels like they're zeroing in on, it's a little lopsided. You got to kind of play co-op. They also seemingly are putting their finger on the fact that, maybe the mode is lacking and needs a little bit more, and I think that that's not too concerning. This one here, it's a brutally fun action game that will be best experienced with friends in multiplayer, and while the gameplay and story itself are serviceable and don't do much to innovate on the series, fans of Warhammer or anyone looking for an old-school shooter will have a good time turning Tyranid swarms into puddles of blood. Yeah, see, this is another one of those times where I'm just always going to snag on that score when it sounds like somebody really, really liked it. Do they... Hang on, let's zoom in here. How do I get this to go away? You guys with your reviews and you inlay a video that comes with me. Has anyone ever told you how freaking annoying that is? Has no one told you that that's like really annoying? If I scroll past your video, I don't want it to come with me. I've never thought, as I scroll down this article, I'd really like that video that I scrolled past to continue to come with me and get in the way of me reading the article. Like, you bunch of doofuses? Quit doing it. Every website does it now. It's obnoxious. Despite the campaign offering little emotional pull and shallow characters, fans of Warhammer and the first Space Marine will certainly get more value with the game through its beautiful character models, vibrant environments, a much-needed improvement over the 360's drab brown scenery. There's a lot of world building and blockbuster cinematics to appreciate, but it's a shame that the story and the gameplay didn't really evolve like the graphics did. As for better or worse, it plays like the original Space Marine with a fresh coat of paint. Oh, okay. So this paragraph doesn't necessarily reflect that. It sounds like their score is reflective of what they think. Yeah. These guys seem to think that no, yeah, it didn't do enough. Okay, well then I actually have more respect for a score that I feel like Digital Spy. I feel like that reflects what they're saying. So let's see why the Xbox one dropped. Okay, they got their first mixed score as well, and it comes from The Gamer. Let's see what they have to say. Courage and honor. And again, we don't need to read every single word. Let's just scroll down here to the bottom. Space Marine 2 doesn't seek to reinvent the third-person shooter or hack-and-slash genre, but it's a competent addition to both. That said, it's a great game for Warhammer fans, and it nails the feeling of being a Space Marine better than any other game. The combat's crunchy and satisfying, executions are beautifully brutal, and the Thunderhammer is one of the best weapons in gaming. But issues with linear levels, ally AI, and the unknown future of multiplayer mar the experience a little. Warhammer fans will pick this up. Everyone else is probably better off waiting for a sale. Really? Really? I don't think we've read a review today that said if you're not a Warhammer fan, you should wait for a sale. That seems to be a bit harsh given linear levels. I mean, I think we all expected that, given the type of game and the player movement and the combat. Ally AI has come up quite a bit. So that does seem to be hampering the operations. But to say that if you're not a Warhammer fan, you're better off waiting for a sale, that seems to be a tad on the harsh side. Embodies the ultimate power fantasy of a Space Marine. Combat feels fantastic. It looks beautifully grimdark with plenty of details for Warhammer fans to note. The cons are linear, plot's threadbare, isn't trying anything new in the genre. Yeah, these are not strong enough criticisms to tell people to wait for a sale. Like, very linear, you should have expected that. Plot is threadbare. Again, I from the from the first trailer I saw, I don't think I expected a very robust story. I expected a very serviceable, straightforward story. And it's not trying anything new in the genre. Again, I think sometimes you just got to be really good at what you are, and it sounds like that's what they did. You know? These are not strong enough negatives to tell people to wait for a sale. So I've not played it, but based on everything we've read today, I don't think those criticisms or those cons are strong enough to tell people, yeah, you should probably wait for a sale. I think that's a bit harsh. You know, that a 7 isn't even a wait for sale game necessarily, according to most people. Most people that disagree with me say that a 7 is a good score, which, you know, I don't feel like having that debate again. But if 7's a good score, then why on earth are you telling people to wait for a sale? That seems rather disjointed. So overall, I feel like the reviews have been very, very good and very high praise for the game. We'll do another refresh here. Space Marine 2 Metacritic score doesn't feel like it's moved all that much. Whoops. I wanted this. There we go. Yeah. Looks like it's just going to stay in the mid to low 80s, which I think is a very good score. I think, you know, if you're trying to come out and be like an earth-shattering game, you want to be a little bit closer to the 90s. If you're trying to get like a Game of the Year nomination, you need to be a little bit closer to the 90s. So I think this is a perfectly fine score. You know, a lot of the games that are going to land in the mid to low 80s are going to find themselves really, really, you know, scraping to get into Game of the Year conversations. And that's primarily because of how the voting process works. The way the voting process works with all of the press outlets and everybody weighing in, this won't be enough, you know. This won't be enough to get into the conversation, I don't think. We'll obviously have to wait and see what the users think, but by and large, the last couple of years we've covered Game Awards, Game Award nominations. That's largely been, you know, how it has landed. Is you've got to be a little bit closer to the upper 80s and low 90s if you want to be in the Game of the Year discussion. So many games coming out, you know, so many games. You gotta be a little bit stronger to stand out. Now, Space Marine 2 could get nominated in other categories like action game, and some of the maybe art direction or sound design. It could get nominations in those categories, I would think. From everything we read today, it sounds like it hits a lot of good notes with those aspects, and so it'll probably land some noms in those other categories for sure. There's still a chance for this game to get into the Game of the Year conversation. Ghost of Tsushima was an 83 and an 82. Both games were nominated for Game of the Year. It's a different time back then, though. You know? It's a different time back then. Barely any 90s this year. There's a lot of games landing in the high 80s, though. You go to OpenCritic, I think is a really good... OpenCritic's been a really big help in predicting the nominations a lot of the times. So, if you go to OpenCritic right now, there's a lot of like 88s, 89s, you know. I mean, those are going to be tough games to beat. Campaign seems pretty short. The bulk of the games dependent upon co-op, and that side won't be fleshed out till the end of the year. Classic wait for a sale. I think that's a complete false summary of what we've read today. The bulk of the game is not dependent on co-op. Nobody said that. The operations are dependent on co-op. I don't think that that's the bulk of the game. And that waiting for that to be fleshed out, I mean, I guess I could see why you might wait for a year, but I don't feel like you're properly summarizing any of the reviews we read today. Everybody talked about how great the campaign was, how great the combat was, how good it felt to play the game, and then there's only 6 of them, the 6 operations seemingly are co-op dependent, but at least 2 of the reviews seem to indicate that they weren't really co-op dependent if you played them on normal. So it sounds like maybe people that were taking the advice to increase difficulty were running into that, which I think is a valid criticism to be like the AI is not very good. But I don't think I read anything here today that says, yeah, the bulk of the game you really want to play, you really have to play co-op. You can't really play it by yourself. I don't feel like that was said by anybody. The best game so far this year is Space Marine 2 one of them? Probably not. Does that change me from enjoying? Absolutely not. Well, sure, I'm going to play this game. It seems right up my alley. Like, it's linear, it's co-op, I'm shooting, I'm having fun. Like, that seems like, yeah, dude, sign me up for that. Sign me up for that. This seems like a game that, like, Madam and I could play, you know, on normal, probably. I haven't seen one review say the campaign's good solo. We read 2 that said that. The one that pointed out the problems with operations literally said that the campaign is perfectly fine solo. It's when you go into operations that solo gameplay gets bad. It's possible you weren't there for that or didn't hear that. I can't remember which was it. The Games Radar. I thought it was Games Radar that basically said it's perfectly fine solo. Operations can be played with 3 players, but unlike the campaign, co-op feels mandatory for getting the most out of this game mode. I mean, that's passively stated, but I feel like a handful have said that the campaign's totally fine by yourself. It's the operations that seem like the AI kind of falls apart. Eurogamer says, the other key point is you might expect that the campaign is at its weakest when played solo. Not only are there numerous set pieces currently designed to be played in co-op, combat is noticeably less consistent in single player. The Tyranid swarms lean more towards trickle than torrent, with some engagements ending oddly prematurely, and you're left mopping up executions of your AI buddies have failed to enact. Yet, when Zornthorpe appears on the screen, the difficulty serves into borderline punishing. Again, your AI companions struggle to manage the intensified swarms, leaving you frantically dodging around to try to take down their annoying floating master. I mean, Eurogamer could be saying that, and they mean the operations. 3 of the reviews we read today specifically stated that the operations were the ones where the AI fell apart. It sounds like Eurogamer is lumping it all together and saying, yeah, the campaign's really tough if you don't have a co-op person with you. So maybe the normal isn't as punishing. Yeah, it also seems like some of these review outlets, like, they up the difficulty because the game recommends that you do that, and in so doing, that's when you're like, oh, you should be playing with other people, right? Like, now, I agree, if you're going to increase the difficulty, this is a delicate balance, right? If you increase the difficulty, you know, do they want to adequately turn your AI, you know, companions into gods, you know? I would be curious if it's totally fine and serviceable when you play on normal. Because if you're upping the difficulty, I think you should just expect that your AI guys are going to have a ceiling on what they can contribute to the fight. You know? So. Guys, we are going to go to Writer's Room in 8 minutes. I'm going to keep this stream at about an hour in length. There's not a reason to belabor the discussion. Game's getting good scores, and we're going to dive into gameplay tomorrow. We're also going to do an Astrobot review roundup tomorrow. So we're going to go ahead and head to Writer's Room. I'm going to give you 8 minutes. If you guys want to try to hit 300 members, I will only owe you 10 for that. I'll give you 20. I'll do another gauntlet today. If you guys can manage to get this thing to 300, I'll drop a 20 bomb on chat and we'll get the heck out of here. You guys have been really, really amazing lately with the support and scrambling for those gauntlets to just get more people in the door and more people into our members-only content. We greatly appreciate it. So we'll hang out for 8 minutes while I set up Writer's Room. Writer's Room is a behind-the-scenes, time for you to hang out. And we don't really need a writer's room today, but we'll go hang out with members and let a lot of you new folks sample the content. It's kind of just a behind-the-scenes thing that we do every day to plan the shows. And yeah, let me get that scheduled. Personally, though, I reckon Space Marine 2 is strongest outside of the campaign. Operations mode offers 6 individual campaign-like missions with a couple of twists. First, you play as a class of this. The combination results in greater emphasis. The first screen is definitely not confusing campaign with operations. Okay, well, I feel like we've kind of been here before. You've made up your mind and you're finding reasons to back it up. We didn't read any other reviews that agree with Eurogamer. Every other review we read seemed to indicate that co-op feels necessary for operations, not the campaign. So you've got one review that kind of backs up what you think. I guess run with it. I don't agree with your conclusion because I think we read a smattering of reviews that better represent than just what Eurogamer is saying. I'm not trying to coax you to buy it, but I feel like you're going to one source to back up your conclusion. We have multiple sources that are not saying what Eurogamer is saying. I think that holds more weight, right? We read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 reviews, and none of them are saying what Eurogamer is saying. They all pinpointed that the problem was that the operations were the issue, not the campaign itself. So, all right. All right, we got 5 minutes. I've got the writer's room set up, and we'll go to it. You guys have 5 minutes to scramble to get 300 members on the week. That would be, what would that be? 37 members, and then I'll drop a 20 bomb. That's the gauntlet I'm giving you today. That's the throwdown. And then the stretch goal for Friday night will be, we'll make Madam play Astrobot. I think that'll be fun. You think you might get the gold version? I'm going to get the gold version just so I can play tomorrow. So that way we can show it off. You know. She says as long as there's no jumping. No, the game we're going to make Madam play on Friday night has a ton of jumping in it. So she's complaining out there. So get to work, boys. Let's get the stretch goal. Is this as good as Space Trucker? Yo, what's good, Angel? What about Squirrel with a Gun? Did you remember yesterday's 50 bomb? Yeah, I did that in the first stream today. Yes, I did the 50 bomb that I owed. Yep. And I'll owe you 20 if you guys scramble. 36 months from D-Tom. That counts. He bumps the line to 264, renewing his VIP. Just got here in the end of the stream. Overall recap of Space Marine. It's got a very strong score in the mid-80s. It seems like the gripes are fair, but nothing that would deter me from getting it. It seems like performance on console is fine. It does have, some frame issues, which we kind of anticipated. It seems like the most consistent feedback we're getting is that story's rather plain and straightforward. Game's very linear, and the operations really require co-op. Like, your AI companions aren't very good. So now, some people are saying that when they lowered the difficulty to normal, it was fine. But a lot of people want to up the difficulty in a game like this because the game kind of encourages you to do so. So, 2 streams for you to listen to? Yeah. Therapy Quantified bumps the line and takes us to 265. He's like, come on, boys. Let's do that last minute scramble. Means we only need 35 more. Thank you so much, Therapy Quantified. Yeah, the first stream was also shorter. We were doing sort of a discussion about live service games. And the upload this morning is also available if you haven't watched it yet. It's taking a very sharp, flat line, which I don't really understand. It could be that we should have really capitalized on Concord instead of Marathon. So maybe people are, I don't know. Maybe people aren't clicking because they don't care. We've already done multiple shows with that marathon art piece. So sometimes I feel like people are like, wait, why are you talking about Marathon again? Because we did quite a bit of Marathon, negative Marathon coverage. So, yo, Joker Quinn gifts a member as well. Thank you so much. Lono concluded that Marathon will be an absolute banger because the live stream performed better and it's got Concord on there. I think Concord's the red hot lightning rod right now. I just think we were trying to avoid having literally 4 thumbnails in a row with Concord on it. So I watched Reforge Gaming review on Warhammer. It seems to me like it would be better to wait a year until everything is in it, as it doesn't have much to offer despite the small amount that it does. I mean, I think the one person said they had played for like 17 hours. So I think a campaign that ranges from, probably 12 to 15 hours. I think they were, doing a little bit more. Campaign in the 12 to 15 hour range, combined with the PvP. I don't know. I think that feels like a pretty good offer to me. All right, you guys have 2 minutes. 2 minutes, and we're going to writer's room. Yep, I've got the writer's room already scheduled and set. Redirects ready. Let me get you guys a hyperlink. Can you do the 2 thumbnail swapping thing? We actually probably should have done that with that stream in particular, because it would have quickly gone one way. I think Concord's the thing to focus on right now, because it literally just got canceled. I don't think a lot of people are thinking about Marathon in connection. I think we did a good job drawing the connection of PlayStation should be looking square at Marathon and saying this is not going to work. So that would have been a good video to do the 2 thumbnail experiment on. It hasn't yet come to live streams, but eventually it will. There are times where I'm making thumbnails for the live, and I'm like, I don't know what I should put. Should I put this or should I put this? And I'll appreciate being able to do that. It's a nice feature. It's a smart feature. So all right, I'm going to spam the link. We're getting out of here. And smash like on your way out. Thanks so much for being a member. You might have gotten gifted a membership today. We had a lot of people gifting. I was gifting as well. So make sure to get into our Discord, connect with the community. If you've been gifted a membership, you get to come to the extra content like this. You get to get into the Discord. Friday night stream with Madam's going to be a blast. If you guys can hit the stretch goal this week, we'll take a break from Destiny, and we will make her play Astrobot. And we could maybe have a community game night in Space Marine 2 as well. So 500 for the community game night, but the stretch goal, you can make her play a platformer. She doesn't like jumping. So I'm going to end the previous stream and redirect people over, and then I'm going to change that thumbnail.